Hey, hi everyone, I'm Greg, I'm a year 2 chemistry major, and today I'll be talking about how we shouldn't judge food simply on taste alone. Okay, so one day I was sitting in Chinatown and this auntie came up to me. So you know the Michelin star soy sauce chicken? She said that it wasn't the best and there was a better one somewhere else. And got me thinking, is there something more to food than simply a subjective taste alone? So a bit of context was, last summer I went to France and we went for this comparative rhetoric program, and we learned that there were a lot of ways to analyze food and foodscapes. And one of the ways is basically through the application of rhetorics. And rhetorics is the art and study of discourse, pun intended. Okay? And food is generally a very integral part of society, and it's played a lot of roles in our society, history, and culture. And it's very multifaceted. And likewise, we need to look at food in a similarly multifaceted way, and shouldn't just focus on just the smell and taste of food alone. And how does this apply to us? So if you can see here, right, 3 out of 4 of the best blogs in Singapore are food related, and these are all Singaporean food blogs, and it's not even all of them. And so Singapore has a cultural marker of food, and our identity seems almost linked to food in some sort of way. And so we need to have a better gauge of how we judge food. And just like how great speeches, right, they draw big crowds of people and they do this, right? Great food also draws big crowds of people. and going back to the idea of rhetorics, right? I like to look at rhetorics as not just a way of analyzing speech, but also as a way of analyzing everyday life. And so the idea of the 3 Greek appeals, right, which are ethos, pathos, and logos. So these 3 Greek appeals generally constitute what makes a great speech. And so I like to, in this presentation, look at food and judging food through these 3 Greek appeals. And so the first one that we have is logos, which is logical appeal. Yes. And so the conclusion, all speeches have a conclusion, and the conclusion of food is that it must be good, right? And the argument of food that it makes, right, is that it must smell and taste good, right? However, taste is not universal, and we all know that different arguments also appeal to people differently. And let's continue staring at this, okay? and like curry originated from India, and however we now have like Malay, Japanese, and Thai curry because of this phenomena that Helen Macbeth, a food researcher, calls the adapted mind. Basically, our tastes are adapted according to the situation that we were brought up and the ways that we grew up in. And so, however, that doesn't mean that there's no metric for it. This is half of a coffee flavor wheel, okay, to describe the different tones and the different flavors of coffee. So we can see that a metric exists. However, just like any argument, right, you have to learn your logical fallacies and your logical reasoning before you can understand this. And like us, we have to educate our palate and our minds to be able to discern how to look at food like that, in that way. And so we go on to pathos, which is emotional appeal. Just looking at this, right, like you want to eat this food because like this is your childhood food and stuff like that. But again, this draws out this idea that like even though it might not taste as good, right, we want to eat it simply because of like our past memories. And one of the ways is through packaging. And so here we see like cookies in like Chinese New Year, like sort of packaging, and it brings up memories of like Chinese New Year and good snacks and good food, right? And even though the cookies may not taste as good, you will like to buy it simply because like it's packaged in a way that reminds us that it must be good because, you know, like it links back to my Chinese New Year experiences. And so imagine going on exchange and then you like miss home and you find a restaurant that sells like chili crab pasta, satay burger, or like liu sha bao donuts, right? And like you want this because you remember home and you miss home, and then like this idea of like food promising like comforts of home, comforts of something that is familiar to you, then allows you to draw in. And even though the flavors are not as good, right, it doesn't really matter. And a lot of restaurants now use this idea of pathos to come about with like their own recipes and their own. So this is a kaya toast, highly expensive kaya toast dessert. And basically the idea is to bring this sense of familiarity to the person eating it. And lastly, we have ethos and ethical appeal. So here you know at least I think 2 out of 4 of the chefs here. And like the similarities of all the chefs are that they are authorities in their culture and their communities and in their own respective fields. And so ethical appeal talks about how food must then reflect the culture and the communities that the chefs are in. And so I talk about this grandmother-grandfather bias. Basically, it's a bias that if food is cooked by a grandmother, it is good, okay? and the idea is that there's this restaurant in the US that gets grandmothers to cook like their specialty dishes, right? And the idea of ethos likewise is represented in this next thing called our Makan Places Lost and Found. If you all remember, right, our Makan Places Lost and Found look at like relocated hawkers and then like try to find where they are at now. And so this idea of ethos comes back in that food that has like ethos, that has there's a chef that is known to their community and that has a history behind it is good necessarily, and that it must be looked for and cherished. And so it comes down to this idea of authenticity. Okay, so you know Violet Poon, and this is her description. And basically, like she has a big part to play in like the Singaporean Peranakan culture, and because of that, right, the food that she makes is authentically Peranakan, or so I can argue lah. And like her food must be then good, right? And so going back to the whole idea of culture again, so this is Malaysian beef rendang. So I'm Indonesian and my family is Indonesian, and like my dad always says my mom's rendang is better. But that's simply biased because like my mom's rendang is better simply because it has more ethos. It's steeped more in the culture of Indonesians more than the Malaysian beef rendang is. And so at the end of the day, right, going back to it, right, we can see that it's not just about taste and smell alone. Amazing food must have all three things in order for us to be able to consciously judge it as amazing food. And whether the influences of all these three things are conscious or not doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day we judge food as amazing because of these three appeals. And lastly, going back to the whole idea of chicken rice, right? This is my favorite chicken rice stall, like chicken rice balls, okay? And so like the reason was, it's very good, okay? That's your logos part. It's familiar flavors but done in a new way and done well, pathos. And lastly, I ate it at Malacca, like the birthtown of like chicken rice balls. And I ate it by a chef that was well known by the community. And so that's your ethos. So at the end of the day, right, the next time you tell your friend like you found a place that is good, that has good food, right? Is it good because it's delicious, or is there something more to it? Thank you, and I'm sorry if it made you hungry.